We're delighted to have the next panel here, which is really kicking off the In the Room workshop that's going to follow. And during the break, I think you guys were modeling the type of engagement that we are wanting to engender here. So good job. Let's keep it going. And for this panel, delighted to have regional leaders that occupy different silos. Some all in different regions around the country. And I've asked Petra Mitchell, who is a longtime partner and kind of at the founding of AMCC, who's from Pittsburgh, to moderate this session, give her take, and that will lead us into what is going to be a workshop where we're going to turn the chairs around into 5 groups is the way that we're going to do it after this session, where we want you guys to get out of your silo, and sorry, Ben, get out of your kind of I need a new word, buddy. And work with other folks on kind of highlighting the good things that have come out of the work done in the last 10 years, but also talking about opportunities where we can, make smarter products that solve problems. So without any further ado, let me turn it over to Petra Mitchell. Petra?
Okay. Good morning, everyone, and thank you, Matt. And where's David? Thank you, David. My name is Petra Mitchell, and I am proud to consider myself to be one of the founding members of this group. 10 years ago when we started, it was a much smaller group, but it was still Mondays at 11:30. And, I think the cadence of those weekly meetings, when I think back on it, every Monday, 11:30, for 10 years, almost 10 years. It's fantastic. I think that meeting cadence has really created this massive manufacturing community all over the country. And I do really appreciate that opportunity and everyone here that participates. So I am from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, the Southwestern Pennsylvania manufacturing community. I run an organization called Catalyst Connection. We're an MEP affiliate in Southwestern Pennsylvania, and I'm really, really happy that several of our MEP colleagues are here joining us today. So I see Nico, Jyoti's here somewhere. Yeah, so thank you for being here. I have also been involved in a number of other manufacturing community initiatives, including the Defense Manufacturing Community, Build Back Better, and a number of other things. All of these collectively have kind of worked together in our region, Southwestern Pennsylvania, with the explicit objective to grow our manufacturing sector and basically create and retain high-wage jobs. I think that's all, what we're all doing. And I'm super proud of the work that we've done in Southwestern Pennsylvania and for our manufacturers. But I realize, there's a lot more to be done. And I'm hopeful that we will have the opportunity to do more work. I'm optimistic, as several of the speakers this morning pointed out. I think manufacturing is a critical part of our domestic economy, national security, all those things that everyone talks about. But I do think that we have to tell our story. I don't think it's a given. I don't think it's a done deal. And so I think for our panel today, I'm hoping that this will be beneficial to anyone that's interested in learning from others. We want to demonstrate that positive momentum in strengthening our communities, how and why government interventions have worked, how they matter. And as we look forward to the future, what else do we need? How can we tell our story? How can we position ourselves so that we can keep this amazing kind of trajectory that I believe we're on? So thank you for this opportunity. So we don't have presentations. We're going to have more of a Q&A here today. And I'm going to just let all the panelists introduce themselves. But as we talked about in our preparation, I'd like for them to kind of focus on this resurgence in the need for domestic manufacturing. What is your region and you as a leader doing to support that movement? And what I really like to hear, I think it really makes it personable. I'm going to ask each panelist, or I have asked each panelist, to kind of just share a quick success story from a beneficiary in their community to really make it real, what they're doing in their region. So I'm going to start with Courtney, and we're just going to go down the line on this one.
Buckley and I are going to throw down first. I don't know about what, just for fun, right? Okay. All right. Well, Courtney Taylor, the Executive Director of Accelerate Mississippi, which is Mississippi's Office of Workforce Development. We are about 3.5 years old. If you ever get the chance to start a new state agency, don't. I mean, I would do it all over again, but it is wrought with fun learning opportunities. We'll say that. But we are ultimately responsible for developing and driving workforce development strategy and action around the state. It really is important, at least for us, that we have an actor that's not responsible for necessarily delivering the actual training. It is so hard when you're delivering training for hundreds of companies or whatever to pull yourself out of that and look at some of these long range issues. So workforce can continue to be just really short-sighted. So we're trying to build our system to be a little bit more longer sighted, not just what people do you need in your facilities on Monday morning, what people are you going to need 5 years from now. So we work with economic developers, high schools, community college, universities, legislators, governor, everybody. One important point is that I report to a board of business and industry. So our board appointed by the governor and the lieutenant governor of Mississippi. So I don't report directly to a single politician, which allows us to do some really fun things. And then I have the board of private industry to kind of help insulate us when we need such. So it's been a fun thing all the way around. But we've been able to drive policy changes within our state funding to really focus more on the long range things, move away from just OSHA 10 to what else do you need to preserve the worker. OSHA 10 is an important part of that, but there's other pieces of that. We've had companies move from saying we want everybody to be trained before they get here to, you know what, we'll just train them, we'll hire them, send them back to our community colleges or whomever to train. So we've worked with our policy to make sure it can help support some funding for that. One of the coolest things that I've seen happen specifically related to manufacturing is our lead engineering school is conducting research now on using equipment that we're giving to community colleges for training. And so you've got your engineers sitting alongside your community college instructors, and that's been really fun. This thing's on, right? I'm trying. Oh, like Taylor Swift. That's what he just said, right? All right. Anyway, so as we've worked through this, we've designed everything and we're working harder to make sure that our workforce can drive this increased productivity. And when we started using that language, it was kind of foreign to everybody. And so what does that mean? An example means we have a new company in rural Mississippi, Noxubee County. I'm sure everybody knows where that is. And it's a company called Huber Engineered Woods. They are comfortable and used to working in rural Mississippi or rural communities around the country. But we worked with that company to get them connected to the high school, the university, the community college, and then they all worked together to apply for funding to pull training equipment into the high school that was not necessarily identical to what the community college had and the university had, but similar to what they had. So it now formally stacks, and this did not require state effort. It did not require the curriculum units. It didn't require any of that. It just took the locals working together. And then they turned that into, they asked us for like, I don't know, maybe $140,000 for this equipment. And then they parlayed that into an Appalachian Regional Commission application to enhance the facilities so that they can add more programs locally to support this company. So we talk about DEI in Mississippi. We're a very diverse state, but oftentimes the people don't live near where the jobs are. And if they do, there may not be training near them. So a concerted effort to put the training where the people are so that they can access the jobs. Once they're being paid, they'll drive and do whatever. So really excited about that. And along as we've worked on all of those relationships, we've also got that equipment will benefit the kids, will understand engineering, industrial technology, industrial maintenance, all of those kinds of things, the array of careers that do require some post-secondary education. And so we're really excited about that piece.
Good morning, everyone. It's great to see a lot of those faces that I saw about this big on the video screen that are now life size. So it's great to meet a lot of you in person. I'm Buckley Brinkman. I'm with the Wisconsin Center for Manufacturing and Productivity. We are part of the MEP National Network. I come from a state that never forgot how important manufacturing is. Manufacturing we're the second highest intensity of manufacturing in the state, the #1 contributor to GDP by a long shot. And we understand what it means to make things. We also have one of the most diverse manufacturing bases in the country by one national measure. We score a 91 out of 100 on all of these, and we know the true value of silos. So I guess I'm really proud to be a part of the national network because I think it's one of the real tools. It's probably the premier example of federal intervention. I mean, the federal investment in the MEP system puts 1,500 really smart people on the ground next to you, passionately engaged with manufacturing and designed to help you reach your ends. There is nobody in the country who understands small and medium manufacturers better than the MEP. And if you're trying to do something with manufacturing, 98% of the manufacturers in the country classify as small and medium manufacturers, and we're the folks who know how to reach them and how to make your program effective with them. What's really fun about being in the MEP is we have the opportunity to, what Mark was talking about today, tie those macro issues and get them down to micro solutions. So an example in Wisconsin is just we're facing the same workforce shortage that all of you are. We saw it coming 8 years ago, and we have a really dynamic and top-notch workforce ecosystem. We've got industry and education and community organizations all working together to solve the skills crisis. There isn't a lot of space there for us. So we looked at that and said, what can we do? And we looked at the numbers and said, our goal is to increase the productivity of individual manufacturers by 40% or more. And so we became that connecting organization that brought together industry, that brought together educational partners, that brought together expertise from around the country, not just within Wisconsin, to define the Transformational Productivity Initiative. And it's something designed to increase the productivity of individual manufacturers by 40% or more. 8 years into it, it's working. It provides a focus for the state's productivity efforts. What we've discovered is two really critical things. One is that the productivity journey for each manufacturer is a unique place. There may be 100 uniform approaches to it, but the 2 or 3 solutions that work for me are not the 2 or 3 solutions that work for Christine, or not the 2 or 3 solutions that work for Yodi. They're very different. So it's a custom approach. And the second is that manufacturers go through, a pretty predictable maturity curve. And it's really important that we meet manufacturers where they are. If they don't understand their basic processes, they have no business looking at any kind of technology. And don't start when you're introducing technology going all the way to connected systems and trying to make it really sophisticated for them. Implement the technology in one discrete place in the organization. So our ability to go into a manufacturer and diagnose that, lay out a roadmap that's based on their market position, their financial state, and also their risk profile, gives us a really good platform to accelerate the productivity of these individual manufacturers and really address this macro issue of the shortage of workers that's going to be with us for a very long time. So thank you.
Hi, everybody. I'm Melissa Roberts Chapman. I was the whoop in the back of the room when Ben said Kansas. I'm from Kansas City, and I lead the KC BioHub, which is a tech hub designee, though we're not funded yet, knock on wood. And so I want to tell you a little bit about the work that we've been doing in Kansas City. I first got involved with AMCC when I was working here in DC, and my career has really been kind of going through a lot of different industries, entrepreneurship support, policy, venture capital, and place-based innovation. And so, when I met the like minds at AMCC, I knew we were going to have a great partnership for a really long time. And thank you for welcoming me into this group today. So the work that we're doing in Kansas City is really focused on a subset of manufacturing, and that's biomanufacturing. In Kansas City, we focus on making biologic vaccines and therapeutics. And so how many biologists, biochemists, biomanufacturers? Oh, hey, okay, like 2 or 3. That's great. So for the rest of you who have no idea what I am talking about when I say biologics are they're drugs that are developed using living tissues or organisms, usually using a fermentation process, and they kind of enable the precision medicine revolution. And so I guarantee you that somebody depends on a biologic every day to improve their quality of life or maybe even to save their life, because they include things like insulin or Humira or, of course, mRNA COVID vaccines, which, God, I hope a lot of us have. And so, the work that we're doing in Kansas City, I think, is a little bit different because, as Dr. Helper was saying a little bit earlier, we've kind of gone on this path in place-based innovation where we talk about deep tech and ecosystem development, and then we have kind of another set of interventions that are really targeted at poverty alleviation or equity. The work that we're trying to do in Kansas City, our vision is to build the world's most equitable biologics innovation ecosystem. And, I think that's something where when people first hear it, their eyes glaze a little bit because they're thinking to themselves, okay, number one, what the heck are biologics? Number two, how are biologics and equity connected? And for us, it's really obvious. So first off, I think when people think of biomanufacturing or the biotech world in general, they think of like an Einstein-like person in a lab coat. But really, the careers in biomanufacturing, they're jobs with skills like pipetting, going like this. Jobs with skills like numeracy, so translating between the imperial and the metric measurement system. Skills like aseptic technique, how to gown and put on protective equipment properly to preserve a sterile environment. And so these are skills that, while they do require training and they are specialized, don't require a college degree. So 70% of the jobs that are created in the biomanufacturing world are actually what we call in Kansas City good jobs. For us, that means jobs that pay a living wage, which is $25 an hour or more in our metro, that provide benefits, that provide pathways to advancement, and that don't require a college degree. And so it's really important for us to, consistently remember that the reason that we're investing in this kind of biotech industry is not to, compete with the coast and high beta innovation, but to really create an ecosystem where everybody in our community benefits from the medical advancements that happen in the industry, benefits from the great employment opportunities that happen in the industry, and benefits from opportunities for ownership and wealth generation that happen and hopefully will happen at an accelerated rate in the industry. And so, that includes work with one of our really core partners, our MEP, of course, in the state of Kansas, to mobilize our great manufacturing ecosystem in Southeast Kansas, Southwest Missouri, to start to manufacture the components and the pharmaceutical excipients and the active pharmaceutical ingredients that are needed to really to support the supply chain for additional biomanufacturing activity in the region. So something that we really think of as a holistic solution. We put equity as a foundational piece of our work. Happy to talk more about it and really excited to be on the panel with all of you today.
Thank you. My name is Dan Radomski. I'm the CEO of a group called Centropolis Accelerator, which is located in Detroit. We really have two purposes and two missions. One is to help develop new physical products and get them made right here in domestically in the U.S. And then the second is working with existing manufacturers, primarily in Michigan because of our funding, to help our Michigan manufacturers. We have 13,000 total, big and small, with the transition to Industry 4.0 and just reducing energy waste emissions and adopting automation and artificial intelligence solutions that ultimately improve throughput, quality, operational efficiencies, and costs, so they can have better margins and invest, and more importantly, be resilient and sustainable over time, competitive globally. So the first is interesting. It's kind of take it back and past to my lifetime. I grew up a machinist. Well, actually, even before that, I was sweeping metal chips on my dad's machine shop floor at a very early age. Hope I didn't just subject him to child labor laws or something like that. But yeah, so I grew up working on Bridgeport mills, surface grinders, doing welding. You name the machine, I worked on it. And then really spent my whole life in manufacturing. I worked for small manufacturers, large manufacturers. I worked for product development firms. My last gig in private industry was running a vehicle engineering firm where we both benchmarked vehicles, tore them down to understand how they were made, as well as designed electric vehicles, for instance. I had 8 of my own hard tech startups as well, so I learned quite a bit from that experience. Most were not successful, only a couple of them were. But it's what brought me here today to do what I do. What I recognized is there's a bunch of wonderful programs available at federal, state levels, and a wide variety of incubators and accelerators that are very helpful for especially startups and helping them with creating a really nice shiny pitch deck and how to put, go to market strategy together. But if you're developing a physical product, really there's no organizations out there that are very helpful with that, like helping design out costs, complexity, design for durability, get the product to the right price point so you can have a sustainable business. So I set forth to try to create a program that would do that. And I was working with the federal government on an idea for even a training curriculum, which is now free and online. It was sponsored by the Department of Energy. It's called Build for Scale. Anybody here Build for Scale? I know you have because you helped fund it. Jetta. So it's really just product development 101 and manufacturing 101, but all in one place, like 900 minutes of education and training and templates, just how to do it, right? So we launched our accelerator off of that. And I started with nothing and was doing most of the CAD design work myself for clients, but eventually we really grew significantly. And now we can make up to $250,000 investments to help anyone develop a new physical product, whether it's a consumer product, medical device, something as complicated as electric vehicle. We can do it. And we're blessed to do it in the Detroit area because we have such great design engineering capabilities. We get a lot of credit in Michigan for our manufacturing bench strength, but really what we're best at in Michigan, particularly Southeast Michigan, is designing out cost, complexity, designing for durability, reliability. We're really best in the world at it. And it's an asset that we need to make available for the entire nation, in my opinion. You asked about a success story. I mean, there's several. I mean, drastically reduced costs from $10,000 to $1,700 to get a product to market. One of our biggest success stories in unicorns is probably a company that most of you know called Our Next Energy. They've received $300 million in federal funding, same amount in private investment. They now manufacture battery cells and battery packs. They're one of the best battery packs on the market. So what we do is we work with a startup or a small business, and we help them go through a design verification process. They have to document the product requirements. They have to go through design for manufacturability, drive out cost, complexity, design for durability. And we put money to help design, engineer, prototype, and test, and ultimately make sure they don't make mistakes. And we've had a 100% success record in getting new products to market. How much money they make is always relative to how unique the product is and how much funding they have for marketing and how complex it is to get the supply chain. But when you follow that methodology, that DVP methodology, like a mature company like General Motors and everybody else, you will get your product to market. So we've been able to prove that out. The second mission that I mentioned we do is working with existing manufacturers to help them become more efficient. We run the nation's only Industry 4.0 accelerator. We go out and tech scout globally to find the best companies in automation, robotics, additive manufacturing, artificial intelligence for everything. And then we introduce them to Michigan manufacturers to adopt these technologies. The state has a great program like Connecticut, where they provide up to $25,000 grant to help implement those solutions. We work with big companies and small. We work closely with GM and Ford, and Whirlpool, Magna, and others where we do internal IFRO demo days in their headquarters. But you asked for a success story on that side. Working with Hemlock Semiconductor, which is a leading producer of polycrystalline silicon in Saginaw, Michigan. We helped them introduce IoT and artificial intelligence into machine optimization, and it improved their throughput by 70%. And that's literally hundreds of millions of dollars per year of value. So it just shows that's an established manufacturer, very efficient unto itself, and just by introducing the right technologies, drastically made them better and more competitive on the global stage.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you so much. And my dad was a machinist, so I know the familiar smell of cutting fluid. I think most of my young
Never
life,
get that
I
out
thought
of
that's
my
just how cars
nasal
smelled.
cavity.
Yeah, that's just how things smelled, was cutting fluid, Anyway, so remember, this panel is about regional ecosystem building and the role of government interventions, right? So Courtney, you touched on this a little bit in terms of some of the partnerships that you have already established and projects that have really excelled in your consortium. But can you talk a little bit about specifically some of the policy changes and any new things that are still missing? Like what else do you still need to really take this to the next level? And I have some other questions for the other panelists, but if you want to weigh in on this question on policy changes, that would be fine too.
Sure, great. Yeah, as part of our, we have a shipbuilding consortium specifically on the coast of Mississippi, but it does come inland a little bit to get to all the supports. And some of the things that we've found is this concept of workforce preservation. I am a purist when it comes to training. I don't, there's certain types of training that I have to happen and they're not training, but trying to build our understanding of what the whole life cycle of the preservation of the worker looks like. We spend a lot of time in workforce talking about their educational experience, but not necessarily their total experience. If they're getting hot and having heat stress, they probably aren't going to come back tomorrow or the next day or whatever. So really, I think working to take the wins to build out what that full worker preservation looks like. I think also specifically on policy, we're working to build out we started with a Defense Manufacturing Consortium's Communities grant, DMCSP grant. And that's been really helpful. And we're trying to expand our efforts and work with Mississippi or Alabama and Louisiana. We are the landmass between the two. So trying to pull everybody together to understand that the workforce doesn't care about our state lines. They genuinely don't. We do. I have to. Alabama has to, Louisiana has to, but where can we build that? And that's one thing I think that specifically federal funding can be really helpful to break that down. I will also say that in our case, the federal funding was really helpful to allow us a vision for something that we had that wasn't necessarily held within a broader part of the state. So we got to test it out, and now it's just part of our fabric. So that's been really, really beneficial. And then I think as we talk about this worker preservation, AI and technology has always been a 4-letter word in the workforce space, one of the few that we don't like. And what we found is that we've got companies that need to automate. And so I applaud the efforts to have this innovation fund where you're investing in equipment and things like that, because I think that matters also.
Does anyone want to weigh in on the policy issue? Okay. Buckley, you shared with me that Microsoft is making a huge investment in Wisconsin, $3.3 billion AI investment, which really feeds into your productivity goals, I would imagine. And they're going to be funding this AI Innovation Lab. How is that going to fit into your productivity goals and your manufacturers?
Well, I can recommend for any state who wants to have a really good strategic partnership, make sure that the CEO of Microsoft went to a university in your state, and that the president of Microsoft grew up in Appleton, Wisconsin, and is a huge fan of the Green Bay Packers. So we have that strong link to Microsoft, and that led to really a groundbreaking investment of $3.3 million for one of their AI co-innovation hubs. And this one's going to be a little different because it's off the coast. The only other two in the United States are on the West Coast. and it's going to be focused on manufacturing. So we're going to, manufacturers can do one of two things. They can go in and really ideate with the company and figure out, is there something that AI can solve in my company, or here's a problem that might fit. And then once that gets formulated, they can actually work side by side with the Microsoft engineers to co-code. So code the solution, come up with the prototype that then they can use in their companies and also sell if they'd like. So that's part of the business model there. Where we're getting involved, and we think is going to be transformational, is we're putting an engineer in residence in the lab. And this person's job is exclusively to make sure that small and medium manufacturers can access the same sort of resources that the big guys can. And so we think from our perspective, it's going to be one of those leapfrogs where we have some of our basic companies leapfrog from continuous improvement and lean and getting right to industry 4.0 using AI. And our role in this is just to catalyze people getting to the lab and then building this notebook of case uses, so that I think this technology is going to be much more about, seeing what somebody did, the approach that they took, and you're going to be able to do a lot of the work internally to your company if you understand those two things. And so I think that's going to have a huge impact in Wisconsin. I think it's going to have a huge impact in the manufacturing community.
And I certainly hope you'll make those case uses available to the rest of us, because, certainly AI in manufacturing is something I'm sure every community is struggling with and every manufacturer is thinking about. So that will be super helpful. Yeah. Okay. Daniel, you touched on this as well, this Industry 4.0 through your accelerator, talking about innovation and so forth. Can you just speak a little bit more about the government interventions that really help to scale your work? And then do you think sustainability without government interventions, do you think that's even possible moving forward?
They're going to have a two-part question. And the first, let's talk about the Industry 4.0 movement. We're already seeing adoption widely of cobots, additive manufacturing, certainly all sorts of artificial intelligence used for connected worker platforms to digitize standardized work instructions. We're seeing AI used for inspection to reduce, and we're going to lose inspection workers, and that's not bad because the technology is more accurate. I had one of those jobs myself, and I would phase out on occasion. So we're also seeing artificial intelligence used for error-proofing manual assembly operations, machine optimization, supply chain optimization. Ford, GM, Whirlpool, the big companies I mentioned that we work closely with, they're adopting those things first, and then they're showcasing them down to their supply chain. I think we're going to struggle is, and there's a ton of focus at the federal and state level on trying to help the small to medium-sized manufacturers adopt those same technologies. And there's a couple major reasons why that is going to be a challenge. One is, the owner is also the HR person, the business person, lead. I'm talking about my dad and everybody else I know that owns a small to medium-sized manufacturing operation. They wear 7 different hats. They just don't have the time to figure out what technology is available to them. So we have to have more technical assistance programs where people that are kind of engineering residents can go in, look at their operations, ask a lot of questions about how you're checking for quality. Maybe we can go to AI for that. How are you actually minimizing, non-value labor time and that type of thing. And then actually introduce projects that then they can implement and maybe even stay with them through the implementation. I mean, it's going to be that difficult to help these small to mediums. The other issue we have with small to mediums is many of them have what's called legacy equipment. So they have machine tools, conveyors, PLCs that are not collecting data. They're 7 years, 10 years or older. Many are like 30 or 40 years old. And you can't really digitize your manufacturing operation unless you can collect data. Now there's solutions around that where you can, add sensors and integrate into an IoT platform and start collecting data and start understanding what you can do to optimize your throughput and reduce machine downtime and all of that. But that's a major investment. right? So that's why these programs at the federal and state level, to get back to your original question, are really critical, is to help those companies adopt those technologies. But without the technical assistance to be able to see it and know what type of solutions to adopt, it's going to be very difficult for them to see what's available and how to make something work in their own operation.
So I think everything that Dan said is absolutely correct. And there's two things that I would add. One is that the number one competition that we have is just inertia. And I think some ways we've been our own worst enemy, because we've continually come to these manufacturers and said, unless you do this, you're going to be gone. And, you know, the guy's sitting there, he says, I've been here 40 years and my Ferrari's parked out back, you know. And then the second thing that we're seeing anyway is the toughest thing to get an investment on is that first piece of technology. So where public intervention makes the most sense is, can you underwrite part of this? And then we can reduce the risk for them because we can find the right technology. And then we find that once they make that first investment and they get that return, they just keep doubling down. Then the waterfall starts and they start really moving forward. So.
And I think also, you know, the thought comes to mind, this democratizing of technology advancement, helping all manufacturers, or as many as are interested in, really advance in that space versus just the few maybe that have the internal resources to do so. Yeah, yeah. I want to give Melissa a chance here because I think you know, this whole biomanufacturing is really new. We're getting started on that in Pittsburgh as well. So I'm really anxious to learn from what you're doing in Kansas City. But you know, just the little bit that I know about this type of you know, long vaccines, biomanufacturing, gene therapy, all that kind of stuff, really seems like a long game. Right? It's a long-term investment. And so can you maybe give us a view down the road? How do you see these interventions down the road, and where and when do you think they will be really necessary to, you know, for all your visions to come to fruition there in Kansas City?
Yeah, well, it's a good question. And to answer the question about a long game, I'm probably going to need a long answer. So I hope that's okay. I have to start off by saying too, if you have not been to the Titletown Tech investments in Green Bay, you really have to check it out. It's a really cool place, but I also have to say, go Chiefs. So, yes, yeah, we take a lot of pride in this moment. It's been a long time coming. So, you know, and I think that's a good place to start, which is that Kansas City right now, you know, if it's known for anything, it's probably known for being in the middle, which is not a particularly economically productive thing. And it's known for sports, which is, you know, great on game days, but maybe not all year round. So, you know, when we think about growth in Kansas City, part of, I think, maintaining that long-term motivation in a civic structure is really getting clear on the why. And I think part of what we have in Kansas City that's really unique, and this is kind of where I start the conversation about, you know, why Kansas City and is the right place to build a biomanufacturing ecosystem, is because we have a challenge, we have a problem. And that's that we're not growing. Like a lot of other cities in the Midwest, you know, our growth has really stagnated relative to our peer metros. And so we've got to make a change. The great thing about living in Kansas City is we have a really diversified economy, and it's a services-based economy. So that means, you know, with all respect to my colleagues in Wichita, you know, we don't have a dynamism problem, right? We do have a growth problem. And so building a cluster is just core to changing that and investing heavily in kind of one area where we can achieve outsized growth. And the focus that we have, as I talked about earlier, is really on doing that in a way that provides equitable growth and equitable opportunity. So just the agreement that we have there, honestly, is a really big asset. And that's something that I think makes it easier to sustain interest and momentum in the work that we're going to need for a 10-year outlook. You know, a couple other things is that, you know, it's really important, I think, in maintaining a long-term ecosystem play to give everyone a role. And so sometimes that looks like overreach in coalition building. How do you know, I think you look at our consortium for instance, the Tech Hub, there's 125 or more members now. And you kind of start to ask yourself, is everybody really necessary here? Well, the answer is yes, but for a lot of different reasons. And so, in a region where we have 2 states, 4 R1 institutions, or at least I should say 3 and 1 rising, something like 12 technical and community colleges, and then 2 really rambunctious state legislatures to deal with. Having a lot of partners around the table is a political necessity. And that's what gives us the ability to sustain in the long run. And so that's another kind of good step into the assets that we have in the region. So people typically come into this conversation, they talk about the research assets that we have across this region. They're wonderful. We've got great biosecurity and biodefense assets at K-State, which is the home of the new version of Plum Island, so the National Bioagro Defense Facility, which does research on the world's 7 nastiest zoonotic diseases. We've got the Vaccine Analytics and Formulation Center at KU, which does a whole lot of work with the Gates Foundation and formulates most of the vaccines that are delivered across the continent of Africa as a result of their work. We've got great bioinformatics assets in Kansas City, along with our gigabit computing power that we've had for quite a long time. And then in Columbia, Missouri at Mizzou, we've got great innovation in imaging technologies and bioinformatics capabilities associated with the Mizzou Next Gen Precision Health Institute and the Vivarium, which runs large animal models out of that facility. So we've got this great kind of research base that spans the entirety of the region. And then we've also got kind of a whole lot of other stakeholders in venture capital, in government, in workforce development. And so all of those work together, I think, to really make this a full continuum of activity. And that is a necessity to maintaining a long-term presence. And then finally, I think the last thing that I have to say about Kansas City is we're kind of doing this, forgive my language, but a little bit ass backwards. A lot of times when people talk about building clusters, they talk about kind of identifying your research assets and building from that strength. And you start by kind of supporting great research and then you commercialize it, right? And that's you get to the TRL 5, and then you take that and you build an industry partnership that gets you to TRL 7, and then you can build projects around achieving commercial scale. We're really working from the other end of the spectrum backwards to research, because in this region, we already produce 1/3 of the world's biologic vaccines that are used in animal health applications. And so when you think about the difference between producing a vaccine for animal applications and human health applications, of course, the regulatory standards are really different, as they should be, but the skills are the same. If you're using a pipette, to some extent, who cares what's in the pipette? It's the same process. So, that translational approach, building backwards from this great industrial base that we have to small and medium-sized manufacturing capabilities, to connections to our regional research universities, that's kind of the long-term view. And so we're actually looking at it in the opposite way of a lot of other communities around the country, building from our industrial base backwards. So all that being said, I think I'm in where I started, which is really about the why. And so we talked a lot about how sustaining interest is important to build a 10-year horizon in economic development. But I think it's the kind of thing that you can see, and if you look at one person's example, and I'm doing penance because I forgot to talk about my beneficiary in the introduction, but I did some research so I could do it well, and I really want to tell you about it. So, one of the examples I'm going to use is a guy named Oscar. He's somebody who's graduated from some of the workforce programs that we have in place in this industry in Kansas City. Oscar grew up in a little bit of a tough neighborhood in KCK, and he will be the first to tell you that college wasn't probably something that was in his future. But he, in high school, had an opportunity to attend kind of like a STEM introduction program and really loved it, found his way into a dual enrollment high school class, dual enrollment with KCK Community College, and then found himself in a biomanufacturing class where he earned a micro-credential that we created in Kansas City from the Bioscience Core Skills Institute, which is also an institution that we started in town that's grown nationally since then. That micro-credential allowed him to go out and get a job at a company that's growing called Roanoke. It's a kind of tissue culture biotool. in Kansas City that supports the biomanufacturing industry. He's been doing great work, but he wants to go back to school. And so because of our BCSI credentialing system, he was able to kind of document the skills he learned on the job in addition to his associate's degree from KCK Community College and enroll at KU Edwards, which is a transfer school that we have to finish his BS in biomanufacturing. So that's like one example, I think, of how all of these different stakeholders come together, from the educational, the workforce, the industry, the startup ecosystems, to help create a smooth pathway for one person to really change their economic outlook in the long run. And that's what we envision at scale.
Oh, Melissa, that's great. Yeah, thank you for that story too. So I'm getting the notice that it's time to end our panel. Just maybe some things that I picked up, that connection to rural communities. I think there's definitely something there that I can learn. Pennsylvania is a very rural state outside of Pittsburgh and Philly. We've all heard that many times. Buckley, the work you're doing on AI, I think that's critical for every manufacturer to be thinking about the role of AI. Of course, what do Midwestern cities do? I mean, Pittsburgh, Kansas City, other cities that we're representing, I think we all have that challenge. And Daniel, I love that connection that you're making with innovation tech-based startups to existing manufacturers. Would be a dream come true for us in Pittsburgh as well. So definitely things to be learned from you on that topic. So everyone, please thank our panel.